Most people talk about letting go as if it's a single action, something that you just decide to do. But letting go is not an action, actually. It's a process. It's a process of understanding. It's a process of realizing how energy, thought, and emotion build a closed system inside of you, and how that system keeps projecting itself outside of you. So you are rendering reality outside of you based on that system inside of you. And until you learn how to release or transform it, things are not going to change. This is not a video about tools or strategies. That video will come later. It's probably the next video. This video is more about understanding the mechanics behind it. So it's basically about the architecture of letting go, because to me it seems like there's a big misconception out there about letting go, and that's why people first, they don't know how to do it. They do something, they think they do it, but actually the results are showing that what they're doing is not really working because they're still in the loops. So things, situations, problems are repeating itself over and over again. And actually, to be able to use the tools and strategies, it's really important to understand the mechanics behind it, because understanding opens you up in a way that you can really do what you have to do. Because again, it's not just throwing something away that happened in the past. It's about transmutation. So it's a much deeper work, and therefore you need a certain understanding of it to be really able to do it. And that's what this video today is about. And after watching this video, you are going to understand what's really happening behind the scenes. And holding on to something is actually the first point I would like to talk about from a perspective of suppression, because suppression is actually what we are doing if we are holding on to something. So it's kind of an active thing we are doing to hold on to. Holding on to something doesn't happen just by itself. You're like not resentful without doing anything. It's like an active step. And that's why it's important to understand what suppression really is and how we do it. Because if you know how you're stopping the process itself, because actually reality, the system, the universe is working for you to release things, to have a better life, to have a high quality of life. But usually what's between the amazing life that you wish and where you are today is you and your mind. That's why it's so important to talk about suppression first. So first, it's important to understand that most people don't let go generally. So something happens in their lives, and usually they get the chance to take what happened and make it really worse than it was. And that's what we usually do. So we are getting the perspective of something. We don't see it as it is. We see it as we interpret it. So basically, it's very subjective what we can observe, how we see a situation and what we feel therefore. And if we see that negative, then the only way we can hold it is by suppressing it, because you cannot let go of something, forgive someone, if you don't change how you see it, if you change actually your subjective experience about the thing. Because your mind tells you cannot change the past, right? You cannot change the situations that happened, right? But there's something that you can actually change. But it's important to understand that usually we don't let go. We are holding on to all kind of bad things that are happening in our lives, and we are using suppression strategies to keep them in our bodies. Because what's happening actually is you observe something bad happens, you feel bad, you have a negative outcome, you struggle with things, and these are actually chances, but we suppress them, which means we are taking the pattern that we just experienced and observed, putting them energetically inside of our bodies to then do what? To suppress it, make it more dense, make it more painful, and then at one point in our lives, it comes up again, same situation, same problems, but a bit worse than before, which means we're having another opportunity of change and learning. So that's basically the mechanic behind it. So suppression is not bad in general. It just makes life harder, and it keeps you away from evolution and progressing. Because the evolution comes after you kind of close or release or transform that energy, that pattern that recreates the pattern in the material, physical reality for you. So you're experiencing the same thing over and over again. And then the question, of course, is, okay, but how do you suppress now? What is it that you are doing to not change the pattern of information that's inside of your body that then recreates reality around you so you experience the thing? What is it that you're doing? And what you're usually doing in this situation is you distract yourself. You are always productive. You eat certain food, usually bad food, unhealthy processed stuff. You are drinking alcohol, you're scrolling on your phone, you are trying to control things, control yourself, control others, control your future. You're pleasing others, you're over-pleasing others, you're thinking 24/7 about everything that could happen, how this could happen, how you could handle things. You're always on your mind. So basically, that's when you see people who are like high achievers, they stop working, but they really never stop working. They're always thinking. And then, of course, another point is numbing. We are numbing ourselves with substances, with certain behaviors. This can also be like overwork out, excessive scrolling. It can be like social dating platforms. It can be partying. It can be all kind of things like that. So everything that kind of gives us a certain pleasure is usually a negative, suppressing, or in other words, coping strategy. We call it here maladaptive coping strategies. Why maladaptive? Because they hurt us at the end. So with those strategies, we think they're good for us, but actually what's happening is the opposite. Things are really bad for us. But then again, if you see reality from a higher perspective, there is no bad. And I think that's an important perspective to hold right now, to understand that those things are not evil per se. These are strategies that are valid and they're helping many of us to evolve. But, and that's the price on the other hand, they keep the energy stuck in our bodies. So basically, they keep the pattern of information, which then is just waiting for a certain moment to play out again, to play out again, play out again. That's why we are in the loops. So you can think about it like this. Instead of resolving the emotion, you press it deeper into your system. So it doesn't disappear. It just gets stored. And every time you suppress, you add a charge. So you have a charge, you add +1. You have a charge +1, you add another one. So it becomes more and more heavy. In other words, the emotional field becomes denser and the signal becomes stronger. And sooner or later, the body has to express it. And how does it do it? It expresses it as fatigue, as tension, or as illness. And that's why suppression is the opposite of letting go. It's kind of holding on with style. Because think about it, everything that you see now on social media looks so nice and cool and those lifestyles, but what actually happens is that we are all working kind of the best we can with this topic, which looks nice, which looks cool, but it's doing what it basically gives us the opposite results that we actually say that we want. Now, let's go one layer deeper. Why does life keep showing you actually the same patterns? Because you are the renderer. Reality is not coming at you, it's being projected through you. And whatever frequency of emotion you are holding inside, whatever belief you repeat, your body and your nervous system become a transmitter of that data. So you think, feel, and act from the same field. And the universe simply reflects that back. So when you keep anger, when you keep guilt, fear inside, you don't just feel those emotions, you literally build environments that match them. And this is why unresolved emotion turns into repeating life experiences. The external is the mirror of the internal. I like to talk about downward spiral because that's actually what we're getting us into. Life is getting harder when we don't let go. And usually what many people do nowadays is that they just ignore things because they think, okay, I don't look at them, I just ignore them, so I'm done. I tell myself I'm over something and it's done. But this is not how it works because there's something inside of you alive and you are now acting kind of static. So you're kind of staying the same because a situation has happened and you try to put it out of you, you see it as not part of you, which means that you are really not changing. You're staying the same. And staying the same in a universe that's not static is difficult because think about it, the universe expands constantly. That means that energy is always in motion. And it's either evolving upward or condensing downward. And when you hold on to emotion, you resist that natural expansion. With that resistance, you create stillness in a moving field. And when moving stands still in an expanding system, it begins to dilute. it becomes denser, heavier, more compressed. And that's what a harder life actually is. It's not punishment. It's physics. The same patterns intensify. Relationships repeat faster, symptoms become physical, depression deepens. That's the downward spiral. Things repeat, but they don't just repeat, they become more difficult over time. So the situations that repeat, you struggle with money, with love, with peace, with your physique, with food, with drugs, with those things, they become more difficult over time. You need more discipline, you need more motivation to achieve a certain goal, a certain outcome that you want. And that's then a downward spiral. An energy that should evolve upward is moving inward and then downward, becoming matter, pressure, disease. That's why life feels like it's closing on you when you don't grow. It literally is. So then, what is letting go really? I think it's important to understand that it's not about deleting something, because that's how many of us try to cope with hard things. We try to forget about it, to just delete it, go for a drink and that's it. Do some stuff to distract ourselves, as I mentioned. But the truth is that you cannot delete energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can only be transformed. And that's actually the core of alchemy. Alchemy is not about getting rid of darkness. It's about understanding its function and then shifting its form. So when you let go, you don't throw emotion away. You transmute its charge. The charge is still there, but it just looks different. It gets kind of a different pattern. You take the same energy that was pain and change its meaning, its pattern, and its vibration. That's why forgiveness, insight, gratitude are transformative. They don't erase the past. They just reorganize the energy around it. It's not loss. It's evolution. And in that sense, letting go is a misleading phrase, actually. That is why so many of us struggle with it and so many of us don't want to look at it, because the people who are like highly rational, for them, it doesn't even make sense at all. And the ones who are more emotional and into the healing space and world, into spirituality, they say they do it, but you see the patterns in their lives, you see their expressions, and it's just not happening. So it's kind of a misleading thing. Nothing really leaves you. What really happens is that it just stops controlling you. It becomes integrated. It changes its shape. And that is why all healing is ultimately self-alchemy. But then the question is, how does the shift happen? And when does the shift happen? And the answer is, the shift happens in the moment you reinterpret reality. When you stop believing your thoughts are facts. That's like one of those biggest things, probably the number one point that keep people stuck in their cycles, in their loops, keep people stuck from really achieving what they want in life, because there's something in between them and they try to, find strategies, planning their lives in a certain way, find discipline, motivation. So you need to really, if you want to achieve big things in life, which can also be just finding peace, finding your purpose. For that, you need to understand first that you have no idea. You don't know. You don't know. You cannot tell yourself anymore ever again that you know certain things. If you believe yourself, which means that you know why certain things happen, how they are, why you feel in a certain way, why people do certain things, you are lost. You are probably not coachable. You cannot do it. You will never be able to change. That's the harsh truth. And then you will see you will get more pain, you will get more diseases in your life, more problems, more struggle, 100%. That is why the number one problem why people experience really tough lives, unfulfilling lives, is because they think they know. They see interpretations as facts. And that's kind of the game of the devil. That's the mental jail we put ourselves in. And that is why the shift really only happens in the moment you reinterpret reality. When you stop believing that your thoughts are facts. When you question the story you build around the feeling. When you recognize what you labeled as truth was only just an interpretation designed to protect you. That's kind of an instant reclaim of power. You separate from the mind that enslaved you and you start to create consciously. At this point, your energy starts flowing again. Life becomes lighter. Why? Because you're moving again. That is why people call it freedom. Freedom to what? To do what? Freedom to move. So the most important things to understand the concept of letting go is that one, suppression keeps energy stuck and adds density to it. So it doesn't just, situations don't just repeat, they become harder, repetitive, plus more pain, more struggle. Point two, what's inside of you renders your external reality. So things happen because they are inside of you. And the only way to change your experiences in reality then is to change what's inside of you, which means that you need to find a different answer when it acts out again. You need a different answer for that emotional pattern that is stored energetically inside of your body. Point three, that the universe is always expanding, and standing still means contraction, which means it's a downward spiral. So if you don't change, if you ignore it, you have the free will, do whatever you wish. Just know that things become harder. And I mean, we see it probably everywhere that people usually need the big hammer, you know, they need like the diagnosis, they need the accident, they need the disease, they need the bankruptcy, they need the burnout, they need the hard pain to change, to basically address that thing. Otherwise, they find 100 reasons why it's not like that and why it's not so important, why not now, and da da da. But if you understand the mechanics, then you can actually interact proactively. You don't need to wait before shit is burning. You can do it now. And with that, you have the chance to live actually an extraordinary life. And then the last point is you need to know that letting go is not losing energy. It's not giving something out or away. This is not how it works. Letting go is transforming it. And if you understand this, you already start letting go. Because that's the thing, you know, the misunderstanding. If people don't understand what letting go really is, then they do something and they are not even close to let go. It may look like it, you know, it may look nice and what they say sounds so smart and everything, but then you see the situations, repeat it. Life speaks for itself. If you go deeper and see how somebody lives, set up his or her life, then you can see. You can see if somebody really lets go or if somebody starts to hold on to things, you know, which can be material, which can be immaterial, which can be emotional, which can be about time, about people, about events. It's all the same because how you do one thing is usually how you do everything in life. And now you understand that instead of fighting your emotions, you can observe them as energy just waiting to be redefined. And once you redefine them, you rewrite your world. And that's what letting go really means. In the next video, we will talk about how to do it, how to integrate, how to regulate, and how to transform in practice. But this is where it begins with understanding.